After a devastating accident, billionaire Daniel Hayes lay motionless in a hospital bed, eyes closed, body unresponsive, declared unconscious by every doctor in the room. But Daniel was awake. He heard everything: executives plotting to seize control, relatives circling his fortune, allies revealing their true intentions. So he made a decision: he would stay silent, pretend to be unconscious, and listen. For days, the truth unfolded around him. Until one night, a black maid walked in and said something no one else had. And in that moment, everything changed. The gala had ended 2 hours earlier, and Daniel Hayes was alone again, the way he liked it, the way he had arranged most of his life to be. He had sent the driver home. Control was a habit. So was solitude. His Mercedes glided along the wet ribbon of the FDR Drive while the city dissolved into red and gold smears in the rain. He thumbed through his phone with the same look he wore in boardrooms, focused, unreadable, faintly bored. 247 new emails. 3 voicemails from legal he would not return until morning. A calendar reminder that the Brooklyn deal, 18 months of negotiation, $400 million on the line, would close before lunch. And not a single line on the screen that asked how he was. He had stopped noticing that a long time ago. The last call he made that night was to Marcus Webb, his chief financial officer of 15 years, and the man the press liked to call Daniel's right hand. Marcus answered on the first ring the way he always did. "Tomorrow we close Brooklyn," Daniel said. "Already drafted the press release," Marcus answered, voice warm and familiar. "Get some sleep, boss." Daniel ended the call without saying goodnight. He never said goodnight. The truck came out of the left lane without warning, a long trailer hauling steel, its driver fighting a wheel that had given up on him. Daniel saw the headlights swing wide. He saw the gleam of metal turning in the rain. He had time for exactly one thought, and the thought was not about his wife or his brother or his empire. The thought was, "I should have said goodnight." Then the world folded sideways, and the noise stopped being noise. He came back the way a drowning man surfaces slowly against the pull into a place that was not quite light. The first thing he understood was sound, the rhythmic hiss of a ventilator, the soft chirp of a monitor counting his heart. The smell of antiseptic so strong it had a taste. The second thing he understood was that he could not move. He tried to open his eyes. Nothing. He tried to lift a finger. Nothing. He tried to speak, and the muscles of his jaw stayed where they were, like a door without a handle. For a wild animal moment he was certain he had died, and that this was simply what death sounded like, a quiet, distant hospital that did not know he was there. Then a woman's voice cut through the blur, calm and clinical. "GCS score is 6. Pupillary response sluggish on the left, absent on the right. He is non-responsive to verbal and tactile stimuli." Paper rustled in her hand. "Mr. Hayes is stable, but we are looking at covert consciousness as a possibility. We will continue monitoring." The voice belonged, he would later learn, to Dr. Patricia Reeves, the senior neurologist on the floor, a woman who had worked at this hospital long enough to have seen miracles and not be moved by most of them. Daniel did not know what covert consciousness was. He only knew what it felt like to be buried alive inside a body that refused to answer him. He could hear. He could feel the cool weight of a sheet across his chest. He could smell coffee on someone's breath. He simply could not tell anyone he was there. That was when the first wave of panic hit him and broke and left him exactly where it had found him. He did not know how many hours had passed when the door opened again. This time the footsteps were familiar, measured, expensive, the soft squeak of a leather sole Daniel had heard 10,000 times in his own office. Marcus Webb. Daniel's chest, somewhere beneath the wires, lifted with something close to relief. Marcus did not greet him. Marcus did not touch his hand. He walked past the bed, pulled a chair toward the window, and answered a phone call. "Richard," Marcus said. "Yes, I am with him now." The voice on the other end was thin and male, but Daniel could not catch the words. "He is breathing on a ventilator," Marcus continued. "GCS of 6. The neurologist is using the phrase covert consciousness, but between you and me, that is just hospital language for stalling. He may not come back from this. Something cold moved through Daniel that had nothing to do with the room temperature. I have already had legal draft the contingency documents. Marcus went on, voice easy, almost cheerful. Power of attorney transfer, temporary CEO appointment, a clean incapacitation filing if we need it. We can have everything notarized and ready before the board meets on the 15th. Whatever Richard answered, Marcus replied without hesitation. No, Vivian does not know yet. She will get her piece. She always does. A small laugh slipped out of him. But yes, if he wakes up tomorrow, we shred everything. If he does not, we proceed. Either way, the company moves. The call ended. Marcus stood, walked over to the bed, and looked down at Daniel for a long moment. Hang in there, partner, he said softly. We have got it from here. The door clicked shut behind him. Daniel, buried, breathless awake, lay in the dark of his own face and understood for the first time in his adult life that the man he had trusted most in the world was already counting his bones. That night, something in Daniel began to wake up further. It started in his right hand. A faint electrical tingle, as if blood were rushing back into a limb that had fallen asleep. He concentrated the way he had concentrated on every problem in his life, narrowly, ferociously, and felt the tip of his index finger twitch against the sheet. It was nothing. It was everything. He could call out, not with his voice, but with his body. One twitch, the right kind of movement in front of the right nurse, and the alarms would change, the doctors would come, the lights would rise, and the long machine of his recovery would start. He would be Daniel Hayes again, the man who walked into rooms and had them rearrange themselves around him. He almost did it. His finger lifted 1/2 centimeter from the cotton, and then in the dark behind his eyes he heard Marcus Webb's voice again. Easy, cheerful, already had legal draft the contingency documents. He heard the cold beneath it, the way Marcus had not asked, even once, whether Daniel could hear. If Marcus Webb Daniel thought, then who else? His grip on the impulse loosened. His finger settled back into the sheet as if it had never moved at all. For 30 years, Daniel Hayes had built an empire on the principle that whoever spoke first lost. He had won every negotiation of his adult life by being the last man in the room to open his mouth. He decided, lying there in the wreckage of his own body, that he would do it one more time. He would stay quiet. He would listen. He would let them all show him exactly who they were. And when he had heard enough, he would decide what and who was left worth waking up for. The night nurses changed at 11. The hallway lights dimmed. The visitors were gone. The doctors were gone. The schemers, for the moment, were gone. Around midnight, Daniel heard a different kind of sound. Wheels, small plastic, rolling slowly. The faint slosh of water in a bucket. The soft thud of a mop being lifted out and squeezed. Whoever it was had a key because the door opened without ceremony, and the smell of citrus cleaner drifted in ahead of the footsteps. She hummed as she worked. It was not a song he recognized, something slow, low in the throat, the kind of melody a woman hums when she is simply keeping herself company through a long night. The mop traveled in even strokes across the tile. A trash bag was tied off and replaced. Then somewhere near the foot of his bed, she sighed a real sigh, the kind that came from her shoes. "Don't know who you are, mister," she said. Her voice was warm, tired, with the rounded vowels of a woman who had been on her feet for 16 hours and was still gentle about it. There was no fear in it, no deference. She did not know whose room she had walked into. She did not. Daniel realized with a small, strange shock, know that he was anybody at all. "But you look like somebody," she went on, "who has not been asked how he is doing in a long, long time." Inside the prison of his face, Daniel Hayes, the man with 247 unread emails, $4.2 billion, and no one in the world to say goodnight to, went perfectly still. He had been bracing himself all night for the next attack, the next betrayal, the next quiet voice plotting his end above the hum of the machines. He had not braced himself for kindness. Her mop started up again, soft and steady, as if the words had been meant for the room and not for him. But Daniel had heard them, and for the first time since the truck had come out of the rain, something inside his chest moved that had nothing to do with the ventilator. Vivian Hayes arrived on the second day, escorted by a man in a navy suit who carried himself like a lawyer because he was one. She came in trailing Chanel No. 5 and the soft, expensive sound of leather heels. Daniel could not see her, but he could hear her settle into the visitor's chair, could hear, too, the small sigh she used to let out at dinner parties when something bored her. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of divorce. He still knew the sound. To the nurse at the door, Vivian's voice was a soft, broken wreckage of grief. "Could we have a moment? I cannot believe this is happening to him. He is so strong, you know. He is the strongest man I have ever met." The door clicked closed. The grief disappeared like a switch. "Tell me again about the disability clause," Vivian said. The chair creaked as she crossed her legs. The lawyer's voice was lower, careful. "If he is declared medically incapacitated within 30 days, we can repetition the divorce settlement under the disability rider. You would be entitled to 22% of the marital estate as it stood at separation. And if he wakes up, then we drop it. Quietly." A small, satisfied breath escaped her. "And no one would ever know I had filed sealed petition, Mrs. Hayes. Nobody sees it but the judge." Vivian let out a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been something colder. 8 years, she said almost to herself. 8 years of being the woman who got dropped because she got tired of being decoration. He owes me. Mrs. Hayes, do not lecture me, Howard. Draft the papers. Tell me where to sign. A pen scratched. The lawyer murmured something about discretion. Vivian stood smooth the front of her dress and approached the bed. She bent close enough that Daniel could feel her breath. For a long beat, he thought she was going to say something to him, something private, something true. Then her hand drifted to his cheek, and her voice, when it came, was honey for the security camera in the corner. "Get well, darling. Everyone is praying for you." She turned and walked out. The lawyer followed her like a shadow. Daniel, paralyzed, listening, added a name to a list he had only just begun to keep. The visitors thinned out after Vivian. Daniel listened for who would come next and found himself surprised by the silence. Then on the morning of the third day, the door opened the way someone opens a door they are not sure they want to walk through. The footsteps were not measured, not expensive. They were the cheap shuffle of a man who had stretched a pair of work shoes 3 years too long. Jonathan Hayes, Daniel's half-brother, 4 years younger, the man Daniel had once called the help in front of the board only once and never apologized for. Jonathan did not call a nurse. He did not bring flowers. He pulled the chair to the side of the bed, sat down, and was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was so low, Daniel almost did not catch it. "They said you cannot hear me, Danny. I hope they are right. Because I am about to say some things I have been carrying for a long time, and I do not want you to hear them. I just want to put them down." Inside his face, Daniel went very still. "You know what hurts the most. It is not that you never gave me a real position. I am okay being the kid brother who never got the corner office. It is not the money. It is not the name on the door." The chair creaked as Jonathan leaned forward. "It is Mom." Daniel's chest beneath the wires contracted. "She asked you for help last year, for her treatment. She does not have insurance that covers the new protocol. The hospital wanted $92,000 up front. She asked me to ask you because she was too proud to ask herself. And you said no, to your own father's wife, the woman who raised you for 9 years after he died, the woman who fed both of us out of the same pot." Jonathan's voice broke once, and he kept going. "She is in a clinic in Newark right now, Danny, the lower-tier protocol. She is dying slower instead of healing faster, because her stepson, the billionaire, said no." The chair creaked back. "I do not want you to die in here. I am not that kind of man. But I will not lie to a coma patient and say I will cry if you do." He stood. He did not touch Daniel. He walked out and shut the door very quietly, the way a man closes a door on a room he is never going back to. Daniel, eyes shut, mouth shut, life shut, felt something tear in him that had nothing to do with the accident. Because he remembered the call. He remembered saying no. He remembered even worse why. He had been on a plane to close another deal, and his stepmother's medical bill had been an inconvenience. That night, Daniel was waiting for her. It surprised him. He had not realized how much he was waiting until he heard the wheels of the cart in the hallway and his pulse under the wires picked up. The door opened. The smell of citrus cleaner. The soft hum of the same not quite song. She did not sigh this time. She just got to work the mop, the sink, the bag, the order she clearly followed every night without thinking about it. Daniel listened to the rhythm of it the way other men listen to music. Then she came around to his side and pulled the curtain back a little to wipe down the rail. "Hello again, mister." There was something different in her voice tonight. Less formal. As if a stranger he had met once was now a person he saw on his street. "You know," she said, "I am not supposed to talk to you. The supervisor wrote it on my orientation packet, do not engage with patients who are not conscious. But I have been doing this work for 6 years now, and I have come to think that rule was written by someone who has never sat with a quiet one." She wiped the rail in long, gentle strokes. "My husband Calvin passed 5 years ago. Heart failure. He was in a coma the last 3 days before he went. I was 29 hours into my second job when they called. By the time I got to him, he could not talk back, and I had 1,000 things I had never said out loud to him." Her voice did not break. There was something in it harder than a break, the smooth, worn surface of grief that had been carried so long it had become part of the body. "I read somewhere that people in comas can hear. I do not know if that is true. But when I came to work nights at this hospital to pay off the bills he left me, I started talking to the quiet ones, just in case, so that nobody dies in here without somebody asking how they are." She moved on to wipe down the IV stand. "You are tonight's quiet one, mister. I hope that is all right with you." The mop went back in the bucket. The bag was changed. The sink ran briefly. She hummed her not-quite song the entire way out. The door clicked shut. Daniel, buried beneath his own face, discovered that the ache in his chest had nothing to do with the trauma to his ribs. He had been spoken to today by his ex-wife, his half-brother, his doctors, his nurses. Only one of them had asked how he was, and she had only done it because she did not know who he was. The next afternoon, Daniel heard them outside his door. 2 voices, low and conspiratorial, the way men speak when they think a closed door is a wall and not a microphone. Marcus Webb. And the other voice, the one from Marcus's phone call on the first night, Richard Calloway, the chairman of the board, the 70-year-old elder statesman whose photograph hung in the lobby of every Hayes Capitol building in the city. "The fund is ready," Richard was saying, "to acquire 14% of outstanding shares if we can move within 60 days. They have the cash on hand. Their counsel is drawing up the offer." "The board will vote for incapacitation," Marcus answered. "I have 4 votes locked. Carlson, Peters, Brennan, and Gates. 2 more should follow once the medical opinion goes formal. And the Brooklyn deal? I close it under my name as acting CEO. Daniel signed preliminary authorization 3 weeks ago. He was tired. He did not read it. He will not remember signing it. Not even when he wakes up, if he wakes up." A small silence followed in the hallway. Daniel could picture Richard nodding in that slow, judicial way he had at board meetings. "And you are sure he will not remember?" "Richard," Marcus said, almost amused, "the man I worked for never remembered who closed deals. He only remembered the closing prices. The signature is real. The seal is real. The money is real. By the time the lawyers sorted out, the building belongs to Hayes Capital, and Hayes Capital in 60 days belongs to whoever owns the most votes on the board." Richard let out a soft, satisfied breath. "You have grown into a strategist, Marcus." I had a good teacher. The footsteps moved down the corridor. The voices faded. Inside room 412, Daniel did the math. 14% acquired by an outside fund. Vivian's 8% under her disability filing. Marcus already controlling the proxy of the board's pension trust. Richard delivering the chairman's vote. His company would be gone in 2 months. And the man holding the knife was the man he had once trusted enough to give the spare key to his apartment. She came late the following night. Later than usual. He had begun to know her schedule the way he had once known the cadence of the closing bell, by feel by a quiet internal clock that did not need a watch. When she finally came in, he could hear that she was tired in a way she had not been before. Her sigh when she let it out near the foot of his bed was longer than usual. "Long shift, mister," she said, almost laughing at herself. Long shift. I picked up an extra 4 hours. My boy David is starting his 3rd year at college and the books for the engineering program well. They are not what they used to be. So we work." She wiped the rail on his right side. The wipes were always slow on the rail. He had begun to realize she did the rail for as long as it took her to say what she had come to say. "I went and signed up for the nursing program again today," she told him. There was something shy in her voice, almost embarrassed. "I am 40 years old. I left the program 12 years ago because Calvin got sick, and somebody had to run the house. I told myself I was going to go back. And then he passed, and there were the bills, and there was David's school, and there was my mama's medication. And the years kind of went." She moved on to the IV stand. "Today I sat down at the kitchen table and I thought, Alicia, you keep telling David to chase his life. You do not even know where you put yours." He could hear her smile even in the dark. "So I signed up. 2 nights a week online. They gave me credit for what I had already done. 22 months and I am an RN. 22 more months and I am fixing people up instead of mopping up after them." The mop went back in the bucket. She came around to the side of the bed. "You know what I have figured out, mister? In all this time of talking to the quiet ones." Inside his face, Daniel waited. "Some people do not need saving. They just need somebody to see them. And the funny thing is, nobody ever sees the people who clean up after them." Inside the prison of his face, Daniel Hayes, billionaire founder, the man who had built a tower on Park Avenue with his own name on it, felt a single hot tear escape from the corner of his right eye and slide down into his hair. The first tear in 30 years. A nurse glancing in an hour later would write possible reflex tearing, no other change in patient status on his chart, and would not think of it again. But Daniel knew what it was. It was the first thing in his body that had told the truth in a very long time. The next night, Marcus Webb came back without an audience. Daniel knew it was him before he reached the bed. The squeak of the leather sole, the cologne, something French, something Daniel had once paid for as a Christmas bonus. The man sat down in the chair by the window and was quiet for a long time, the way a man is quiet when he is gathering courage to do something he has rehearsed. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Not the warm, professional voice he used on calls. This was the voice underneath it. 15 years, Daniel. The chair creaked as he leaned forward. 15 years of being your shadow. 15 years of moving cities for you. 15 years of missed birthdays, not yours. Mine, my son's, my anniversary. I have a son, Daniel. He is 16. You met him exactly once at a Christmas party in 2017, and you called him Tyler for the rest of the night, even though his name is Adam. A small, ugly laugh slipped out of him. You never asked about my wife. Her name is Diane. We have been married 18 years, and one time she sat next to you at a charity dinner, and you spent the entire dinner on your phone closing a deal in Tribeca, and afterward she cried in the car. Marcus stood. Daniel could hear him walk to the foot of the bed. You think loyalty is something money buys. It is not. Loyalty is something money rents, and the rent is up. Something thumped softly onto the rolling tray beside the bed, a small stack of papers. Sign these when you wake up, Daniel. They make the transition clean. You step down with dignity. You keep a courtesy seat on the board. The press writes a nice story about your courage. You keep your name on the building." He drew a slow breath. "Or do not wake up. Either way, I win." The leather soles squeaked back to the door. "I learned from the best," Marcus said. The door clicked shut. Daniel, alone in the dark, understood three things in quick, terrible succession. He had not just lost his lieutenant. He had lost a man whose pain he had never noticed because he had never thought to look for it. He had paid Marcus Webb a great deal of money for 15 years and had not once asked the man's son's name, Tyler, Adam. He was not even sure now which one was right. On the morning of the 7th day, something nearly went wrong. Dr. Patricia Reeves came in early with 2 residents trailing her and stood at the foot of his bed with a chart she had been studying for some time. "His brain activity," she said to the residents, "is higher than I would expect for a Glasgow coma score of 6, significantly higher. There are episodes overnight where his prefrontal cortex lights up in patterns I associate with attentive listening. I want a functional MRI. The full protocol Owen Coleman Tennyson House paradigm. I want to know whether Mr. Hayes is in there." One of the residents wrote something on a clipboard. "Schedule it for tomorrow morning," Dr. Reeves said, "before rounds." Inside his face, Daniel went very still, the kind of still that felt like a held breath, even though he was breathing on a machine. An fMRI of that kind would not be fooled. He had read about it himself years ago in a magazine on a flight. The doctor would ask him to imagine playing tennis. The doctor would ask him to imagine walking through his house. The wrong parts of his brain would light up in the wrong order, and the game would be over. He would have to wake up. Or he would be exposed. He was still working through the equation when the door opened again 4 hours later, and Marcus Webb walked in with the financial controller of the hospital. "I was looking at his bills," Marcus said pleasantly. "The fMRI is what, $14,000 and not covered by the family's wishes for conservative care. We are just not comfortable spending that much on a procedure his neurologist herself describes as exploratory." The controller, who knew exactly which side of his bread had butter on it, agreed that the test was indeed exploratory. "Then please ensure," Marcus said, "that Dr. Reeves understands the family's position." The fMRI was canceled by the end of the day. Daniel, listening, caught the strangest emotion he had felt yet. Gratitude. Toward Marcus Webb. The man who wanted him gone was now the only thing keeping his secret alive. He almost laughed inside his own face. He could not remember the last time something in his life had been that funny or that grim. Vivian came back 2 days later alone. She did not bring the lawyer. She did not bring a nurse. She walked in the way a woman walks into a room she has been thinking about for some time, and she closed the door behind her, and she did not turn on the second lamp. Daniel heard her stand at the foot of his bed for a long time without speaking. Then her shoes moved up alongside it, and she stopped beside the ventilator. He felt her hand brush the plastic of the breathing tube where it ran down toward his face. The lightest possible touch. Just a fingertip sliding along the ribbed surface. "You know what is funny, Daniel?" she said, and her voice was so quiet it sounded almost tender. 8 years ago, when you handed me those papers, I sat in a hotel bar for 4 hours and tried to decide how I felt. Not sad. That came later. In that bar, I just kept asking myself, would I kill him if I could, honestly? Would I? Her finger lifted off the tube. I decided no. I decided I was not the kind of woman who would do that. I was very proud of myself for deciding it. A small, dry laugh escaped her. And then I came in here today, and I looked at this little tube, and I thought, I thought if it slipped, who would even know? She brought her face close to his. Do not worry, darling. I am not going to do it. Not because of the cameras. She drew a soft breath. Because I do not have to. There are men in this building who will do it for me in their own way, on their own timeline, and I will get my 22% and a sealed file and a clean conscience and a house in the Hamptons. And nobody will ever know I stood here and considered it." Her heels turned away. The door opened. The door closed. Daniel, invisible inside himself, added another line to the list he was keeping. He realized, the only person left in the world who knew what kind of woman his ex-wife really was, and he was supposed to be unconscious. She came to him on the 9th night with a piece of paper in her pocket. She did not mean to read out loud. He could tell something was different the moment she came in. She did not hum. She did not sigh. The mop moved without rhythm. The bag was changed without ceremony. When she came around to the rail, she did not wipe it. She just sat down on the edge of his visitor's chair and let out a small broken sound that was not quite a cry. "I am going to read you something, mister. I am sorry. I do not have anybody else to read it to, and I cannot read it out loud in my own kitchen because my mama is in the next room." She unfolded a piece of paper, the thin official rustle of a notice. "Final notice of foreclosure. Property, 142 Linden Avenue, Queens, New York. Outstanding tax debt, accrued interest and penalties, $42,118. You have 30 days from receipt of this notice to remit payment in full or vacate the premises. Failure to do so will result in the property being scheduled for public auction." She folded the letter back up. 16 years, she said quietly. "We bought that house when I was 24. Calvin built the back porch with his own hands. He poured the steps himself. There is a square in the cement by the door where my David put his handprint when he was 5 years old. I look at that handprint every morning when I leave for work." A long, soft exhale slipped out of her. "I cannot save $42,000 in 30 days, mister. I cannot. I have run the numbers 11 different ways. I just cannot." She pressed the heel of her hand into one eye. "But I am not going to cry about it. I am too tired to cry about it. I will figure something out. I always do." She stood up. She wiped the rail. She finished her work the way she finished it every other night, because she had nowhere else to go and the $10 an hour shift was still $10 an hour. She did not say good night to him. She just left. Daniel, paralyzed in a hospital bed with $4.2 billion in instruments he could not currently sign for, lay in the dark and felt something he had never felt in his entire functioning life. Helpless. The board meeting took place on the morning of the 11th day in a conference room at the hospital that still smelled faintly of cafeteria coffee. Daniel was, of course, not invited. He found out the way he found out most things now, by listening. Dr. Reeves came to his bedside that afternoon to tell him. She still spoke to him the way she spoke to all her patients, gently, fully, as if the chance that he could hear was reason enough to behave as if he did. "Mr. Hayes, the board met with your medical proxy this morning. The decision has been made to transfer you to a long-term recovery facility in Greenwich, Connecticut, the day after tomorrow. They have requested it on the grounds of enhanced specialized care. I disagreed. I was outvoted." A small professional sigh escaped her. "For what it is worth, I am sorry. I think there is more going on with you than the records show. I wish I had been able to prove it before this point." She squeezed his hand briefly. Then she was gone. Daniel, lying in the room he had begun to think of as his only real home in the world, understood the shape of it perfectly. A private facility. Marcus's choice of doctors. Marcus's choice of staff. Mount Sinai had been a public hospital with night cleaners who hummed not quite songs. Greenwich would have none of that. Alicia worked here. Alicia did not commute to Connecticut. If he let them move him, he would never hear her voice again. And he would never be able to do for her what he had spent the past 2 days lying in this bed wanting to do, which was to keep her in her house and put her son through his last year of school and make sure the woman who had asked him how he was doing got asked in return exactly once. He had until tomorrow night. She came to him for the last time without knowing it was the last time. It was past midnight on the 12th night. The transfer was scheduled for 6 in the morning. She did not know about any of it. She came in with her cart the way she always did, and she hummed her not-quite song the way she always did, and she went about her work in the quiet, patient rhythm she had taught Daniel without ever meaning to teach him anything. When she came around to the rail, she did not sit down. She did not unfold a letter. She did not laugh at herself. She simply rested both hands on the rail of his bed and looked down at his face for what felt even to him in the dark like a long time. "You know, mister," she said, "I do not know if you are going to wake up. I do not. But if you do, I hope somebody up there has been telling you the truth about your life. Because I have been in this room a lot in the last week and a half. And the people who come to visit you, they do not sound like they love you. They sound like they are waiting." Her voice softened. "I do not know who you are. I do not know what kind of life you built. But everybody deserves at least one real person in the room. So if you ever do wake up, mister, find one. Even if it takes you the rest of your life. Find one real person before it is too late." For one long, impossible moment, she put her hand over his hand. "Good night, mister. Take care of yourself wherever you go from here." She lifted her hand. The cart rolled toward the door. The smell of citrus drifted out with her. The door clicked shut. Daniel, silent, motionless, awake, understood in that exact moment that he had been wrong about every single thing he had decided since the night of the truck. Staying quiet had given him the truth about everyone who hated him. It had also lost him the only person who had ever, even by accident, loved him as a stranger. If he did not move tonight, she would walk out of his life forever. And he had spent his entire life letting the right people walk out of it. The door had not been closed 5 minutes before Daniel began to fight. It started in the right hand, the same hand that had nearly betrayed him on the first night, the same hand he had spent 12 days teaching himself not to use. He concentrated until the index finger lifted clear of the cotton, then the middle finger, then the whole hand, slowly with the care of a man defusing something. The arm came next, then his eyelids heavier than he had remembered eyelids being. He let them open for the first time in nearly 2 weeks, and the dim ceiling of room 412 swam above him like a thing seen through water. He could move. Slowly, painfully, but he could move. He tested his voice. A small, dry sound came out of his throat, no louder than a cough. He stopped. He did not want them to find him before the transfer team did. He did not want anyone to find him before he had decided what kind of man was going to wake up. He lay there in the dark with the ventilator still hissing politely at his side, and he thought of all the things he had heard. He thought of Marcus's son, whose name was Adam, not Tyler. He thought of Jonathan's mother slow dying in a clinic in Newark. He thought of a back porch in Queens that had been built by hand. He thought of a woman who had asked how he was doing and had not stopped asking just because he had not answered. The man who had decided to lie still for 12 days and listen had finished listening. Now the listening was going to start mattering. The transfer team arrived at 6 o'clock with the morning shift change. 2 paramedics, a senior nurse, a clipboard, and Marcus Webb himself in a charcoal suit hovering in the doorway with the faintly nervous energy of a man closing the most important deal of his life. Daniel kept his eyes shut while they unhooked the secondary monitors. He let them roll him gently onto his side. He let them slide the transfer board under his back. It was only when the senior nurse counted 1, 2, 3, and they began to lift him that Daniel, for the first time in 12 days, opened his eyes. The room froze. The senior nurse made a small professional sound and nearly dropped the board. One of the paramedics actually said, "Jesus." The clipboard hit the floor. Marcus Webb went the color of the sheet beneath Daniel's body. Daniel. Marcus took a step forward, his face arranging itself into shocked relief so quickly it almost worked. "Oh, thank God, somebody get Dr. Reeves, he is awake." Daniel's voice came out of him like rust scraped off a hinge. Not loud, not strong, but perfectly clear. "Marcus." Marcus stopped where he was. "Marcus," Daniel said again, his eyes bloodshot, unflinching, fixed on the man who had been his right hand for 15 years. I heard you. Marcus's mouth opened. I heard... Daniel went on slowly, every syllable costing him every single word. The senior nurse, who had been a nurse long enough to know an ending when she saw one, very quietly stepped backward and pretended to read a chart on the wall. "Page Dr. Reeves," Daniel told her, "and cancel the transfer." He did not look away from Marcus once. "And you," he said, "are going to stand exactly where you are until she gets here." Dr. Reeves arrived inside 3 minutes. She listened to him. She tested him. She did not at any point in the next half hour manage to stop smiling quietly, professionally, the way a woman smiles when something she had been arguing for has finally proved itself in front of the people who outvoted her. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "you are going to be in this hospital for at least another 6 weeks. "Doctor," Daniel answered hoarsely, "before we discuss anything else, there is a woman who works the night cleaning rotation on this floor. Her name is Alicia Johnson. I need to know where she lives. Today. This morning." Dr. Reeves blinked once. Then she looked at the senior nurse. The senior nurse who had heard every word Marcus Webb had spoken in the last 12 days and now understood why picked up the phone. "I will get her address," she said. 48 hours later, Daniel Hayes, still in a hospital gown, beneath a charcoal overcoat, still hooked to a portable monitor, still moving like a man who had not used his own legs in almost 2 weeks, was wheeled into the executive conference room of Hayes Capital Group on the 44th floor. He had refused to do this in a hospital. He had refused to do it on a phone. He had told his secretary he wanted every relevant party in the room and the door closed. They were all there. Marcus sitting very straight in the chair beside the head of the table. Richard Calloway, white-haired and perfectly composed. Vivian, by virtue of her continuing 8% on the far side. Jonathan, summoned without explanation, standing near the back wall, as if he had been told there was a place for him and was not yet sure he believed it. Daniel did not raise his voice. He never had. He did not raise it now. "Marcus, on day 2, you called Richard from my hospital room and discussed the contingency documents. On day 5, you locked 4 board votes for an incapacitation filing. On day 7, you killed the functional MRI Dr. Reeves had ordered because you did not want me proven conscious. I have all of it. Audio timestamps, witness corroboration from the hospital chart system. I also have a full ledger of the $3 million you owe a private brokerage in Stamford from the crypto position you opened in 2022. Your wife Diane does not know. Your son Adam does not know. You have 60 minutes to clean out your office. The severance you negotiated for yourself in your own contract is the severance you will get. Not $1 more." Marcus did not stand. Marcus did not argue. Marcus simply sat there with the look of a man who had been waiting in some quiet part of himself for this exact sentence for a very long time. "Richard, the Castellan Fund pulled their offer this morning. I called their managing partner before I called you. You will resign from this board by the end of business today. The press release will say health reasons. That is the only kindness left in this room for you, and you should take it." Richard nodded once slowly and did not speak. "Vivian." She stiffened. "Your 8%, I am buying it. Today, at market. After the wire clears, I do not want to hear your name again in any room for any reason." Her mouth opened, then it closed. Daniel turned with some difficulty in his chair. "Jonathan." His half-brother straightened the way a younger brother straightens when an older brother says his name properly for the first time. "Mom's treatment," Daniel said. "Paid in full, retroactively. Every protocol she should have been on starting yesterday. The bill comes to me personally, not the company, and I want you on the executive board. Not because you are family, because you were the only person in this building who told me the truth when you thought I could not hear it." Jonathan put a hand over his mouth and turned away from the table. Daniel looked back at the rest of the room. "This meeting is over." The town car pulled up outside the small brick house in Queens at 9:15 in the morning. The auction notice was taped to the front door. A moving truck was idling at the curb half a block away. Daniel had been told he had 2 hours before the auctioneer's people arrived to take possession. He climbed the front steps slowly with a cane, and he stopped at the bottom of the porch. There was a square of cement set into the base of the steps. In the middle of the square, pressed there a long time ago by a small hand, was the print of a child's palm. He stood and looked at it for a long moment before he raised the cane and knocked. She opened the door in a sweater she had clearly slept in. There were boxes behind her in the hallway. A roll of packing tape on the floor. Her eyes were red, the way the eyes of a woman who has not allowed herself to cry in front of her family are red. She did not recognize him. Why would she? She had only ever seen his face from the side in the dark with a tube taped across his mouth. "Mrs. Johnson," he said, "my name is Daniel Hayes. I was the quiet one in room 412. The color went out of her face in a single breath. Her hand caught the door frame. She could not speak. "I am not here," he said gently, "to give you money." He held out an envelope. "I am here to give you 3 things. The first is the deed to this house. Free and clear of the back taxes, the penalties, and the lien. Calvin built the back porch. It is not going anywhere." Her breath broke. "The second is a full scholarship for the rest of your nursing program. Columbia if you want it. Hunter if you would rather. Tuition books, living stipend, all of it. So that you can finish the thing you set down 12 years ago to take care of the people you loved." She put a hand over her mouth. "And the third," he took a slower breath because this one cost him. "The third is a foundation, $50 million in seed funding. The Calvin Johnson Memorial Fund, for working families in this country whose insurance does not cover what their loved ones need. You will be the honorary chair. The name on the door, if you want it on the door, is his." She did not cry the way he had expected her to cry. She cried the way someone cries when, for the first time in 5 years, another person has finally said the name of her husband out loud as if he had mattered. "Why?" she whispered. Daniel looked down at the small handprint at the bottom of the steps. "Because you asked how I was doing," he said, "and nobody else did." 6 months later, on a clear Saturday in October, Daniel Hayes sat on the back porch of 142 Linden Avenue with a cane across his knees and a coffee in his hand. The porch was holding up just fine. Calvin's work, it turned out, had been good work. Inside the house, David was quizzing Mama Rose on the names of the trees in the backyard, and Mama Rose was getting every single one of them right. Alicia came out through the screen door with the pot, refilled his cup, refilled hers, and sat down beside him. They did not say much. They had stopped needing to. In a quiet voice, not for anyone but the morning Daniel spoke the only line he had left to say. "I spent 30 years building what I thought was an empire. Turned out I was building a tomb. The first time I felt alive, I was supposed to be dead, and the only person in the room who treated me like a human being did not even know my name." He took a slow sip of his coffee. "Some people do not need saving. They just need somebody to see them. It took me dying to learn how to look." Maybe the part of this story that is not really about Daniel Hayes is the part where you are listening. Because somewhere in your life, there is an Alicia, a waitress who knew your order before you ordered it, a neighbor who waved every morning, a teacher who pulled you aside one afternoon when you were too young to understand why. Maybe somebody you have not thought about in years, whose name just floated up in your head while you were listening to this story. Tell me about them in the comments, their name, what they did, why it stayed with you. I read these. And somewhere out there is another listener having a hard week who needs to hear about your person more than they need anything else today. If this story moved you, a like helps more than you might think. And subscribing keeps stories like this finding you. And if there is somebody you love who needs to hear this, really hear it. Send it to them. Sometimes the right story at the right moment is the somebody seeing them they have been waiting for. Take care of yourself out there. And do not forget to look.
In the earth, the scariest thing was never goodbye. It was time. We once spoke like we were certain, like forever wore our names. Built our dreams on steady promises that we swore would never change. Every word felt strong as heaven, every vow too pure to fade. But time can quietly rewrite even the strongest faith. In the end, the cruelest thing was time, turning promises to lies, taking all we thought was certain and changing it with passing nights. Time can steal what hearts once believed, can blur the truth we held so tight, making always feel like nothing, just another sweet goodbye. No one plans for love to weaken, no one speaks to break a soul. But seasons shift and people change, and even fire can lose its glow. In the end, the cruelest thing was time, turning promises to lies, taking all we thought was certain and changing it with passing nights. Time can steal what hearts once believed, can blur the truth we held so tight, making always feel like nothing, just another sweet goodbye. Now I feel no words or endings, only moments drifting by. 'Cause sometimes love doesn't betray you, time does. In the end, the cruelest thing was time, turning promises to lies, taking all we thought was certain and changing it with passing nights. Time can steal what hearts once believed, can blur the truth we held so tight, making always feel like nothing. Just another sweet goodbye.